the International Business and Strategy Group, and we're going to talk about a kind of a large project that we have. It focuses on R&D in emerging economies, and specifically the role of geographic location within a country. Our overall kind of research question that motivated our study is that how does the presence of other innovation activities influence firms' decisions regarding their own innovation activities? And first off, research on co-location suggests that other firms with other firms, co-location with other firms results in technological knowledge spillovers. In addition, in emerging economies where you have weak intellectual property rights regimes, we would expect that the quantity of spillovers from neighboring firms would increase. But this also makes firms more vulnerable to valuable technological knowledge being appropriated by others. In addition, what we find is that in R&D, in emerging markets, specifically in terms of R&D activities, domestic firms are eager to catch up, meaning they are motivated to upgrade their capabilities and improve their technological know-how. And more specifically, they aim a lot of their innovation efforts at imitation. So I'm sure you've heard the term emerging market copycats. In addition, what you find is that if you have highly skilled labor, these sectors are very prone to attrition. So attrition rates in these sectors run 30 to 35%. And this highly fluid labor market can accelerate the flow of information even more. So we have 3 research questions that our project addresses. First is how much to invest in an R&D laboratory, given the presence of other firms around you, where to set up an R&D laboratory, and whether to close an R&D laboratory, again, given the presence of other firms around you. What we have is the population of R&D labs in India. And we have this for 8 years, from 2003 to 2010. And every year there's approximately 1,200 labs, and that figure varies from year to year with more entries and closures, and etc. We divide our population into labs that are from the same industry as the focal firm. Also labs that are in different industry from the focal firm. And also depending on whether or not these other labs are domestic labs or whether or not they're foreign labs. We use SAS and SQL to merge our data with financial information about these firms, and also to create agglomeration measures for each location. In addition, we use ArcGIS to measure geographic distance between the R&D lab and its headquarters, as well as its proximity to urban centers. To give you a sense of R&D labs in India, this is from 2009. This is kind of where the R&D labs are located. The nice thing about this in India is that you don't have kind of just one location or 2 locations that are centers for R&D laboratories. You see that the locations are very diverse and dispersed throughout India. You have a number of locations that have a high concentration of firms. You also have a lot of locations that have moderate concentrations of firms, and then quite a few that have low concentrations. There's a lot of diversity. So our first study looked at how much to invest in an R&D laboratory. Specifically, if you are located in a location that has a lot of other firms around you, and you have weak intellectual property rights, you should be able to benefit in some way from the investment that your neighbors are making. Specifically, you should be able to kind of free ride off of their investments. And this would lead you then in turn to kind of decrease your own investment in your R&D lab. So our dependent variable in this case is R&D lab expenditures, so how much firms are spending on their R&D lab. And what we find is that we have a negative and significant effect. So firms do decrease their R&D expenditures. In other words, they are able to free ride off of investments made by other surrounding laboratories. But specifically, that's limited to other domestic labs. So as the presence of other domestic labs increases, firms in India decrease their R&D expenditure. And now Grigorios will take over.
So our second study, or our second question was where to set up an R&D lab. And what we did, we looked at the entries of both domestic and foreign firms in India, the actual location. And there is this story that foreign firms, when they enter in a foreign location, what they do, they try to look for locations where industry concentration is high, where other firms, either foreign or domestic, have high presence. And that's what we call liability of foreigners. Like I'm unfamiliar with the formal and informal institutions of these countries. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to enter in locations where there is high presence of either same industry or across industry labs, whether they are domestic or foreign. So this theory would predict that foreign firms should be more attractive than domestic firms in those locations. What we find here, we look at the marginal effects, the average marginal effects, those red coefficients there, we find that domestic firms actually prefer more to be located in when the presence of same industry or across industry, domestic or foreign labs, is higher. So we attribute this to this catch-up theory, where it says that domestic firms, they are actually attracted to foreign firms, and they are actually attracted where the agglomeration is high in order to upgrade their capabilities. Now, moving to okay, so moving into our last study, we know that firms free ride on the investments of other firms. And given that these firms have also entered in a specific location, our next question is whether to close an R&D lab. And what we did here, we had a dependent variable was exit of an R&D lab, and we split our sample into three categories. We looked at the leaders, where in this case, so we look at the leaders, where leaders are multi-lab firms, so firms that have more than one labs, and you might have public and private listed. Then we look at what we call the middlers, single lab public firms, and we look at the laggard single lab private firms. And as you might imagine, the leaders are the most technologically advanced firms, whereas you go towards the laggards, those are the firms that are more technologically inferior. And what these results say, they say that, the literature is finding that leaders have actually the most to lose from knowledge spillovers, so only the leaders will leave locations where agglomeration is high. Now what we're finding here, we are accounting for firm heterogeneity, and what we're finding that is not only the case, not only the leaders will leave from locations where industry agglomeration is high, both for domestic or foreign, but also the laggards have a lot to lose, and they leave locations that have high industry agglomeration. But these laggards are also attractive to across industry agglomerations. Now the foreign firms, what we see here, we see probably that both the leaders and the laggards, they want to live from where we have high industry agglomeration of foreign firms, and we attribute that to pressure on the wages by the foreign firms. So finishing up, we found three results. Collocation drives or results in knowledge spillovers, but only from domestic firms. There is a strong catch-up motivation of firm behavior. Indian firms are attracted to locations with high presence of R&D labs, but they do more so than the foreign entrants. And you have exit. Knowledge spillovers drive domestic firms from a location. The technological leading firms, they leave as the presence of other domestic firms from the same industry increases, and so for the smaller firms. And of course, the presence of the foreign firms from the same industry also causes exit, but here the motivation is crowding out of local labor markets. Thank you very much.